thought I'd start with a poem. So this is one of my favorite poems, and it won a prize in a pretty good contest, and it's never been published. I've sent it out like 20 times, and I'm reading it to remind me not to give up, and maybe that's good for you too. Ordinary light. Say that you switch on the light, and say that people passing in the street turn to the sudden golden warmth of it, wish they were you, the way you seem to them silhouetted there. Not one of them imagines the piercing losses hoarded in tears, leaning toward you away, constantly in peril of tumbling. Say that you hear the first murmur of it all unbalancing, whisper of memory, rush of forgetting. Say that you notice how everything comes to rest, illuminated in a way so tedious you can't imagine how anything that mattered was ever there at all. In darkness so absolute, it's impossible to calculate time. Out there, the moon gives no hint. It could be a glass bead, a paper plate, a face you remember, a face you're trying to forget, or it's nothing, an ordinary light that can't penetrate these shadows. And finally, what is the difference between here and there, this and that? Full of loss and mourning, you're bound to bear any risk. Turn to take in for the last time all you left behind. Perhaps it would be better to have never had anything, to have nothing then to lose, to be the one always on the outside, wandering the far-flung dark. Yeah, I like it. I don't know why nobody else likes it. When I was trying to put together poems for tonight, I'd been working on some memory poems and family poems, and so I pulled those because that's what I'm thinking about right now. And I'm glad to see that some of you are at least somewhere near my decade, so some of these things will make sense to you. And for the younger people, I'll try to make it make sense. So this poem actually was nominated for a pushcart prize, and I know like 150,000 people are nominated for that prize, but I have to say it was kind of a thrill anyway. It's called Mangle, and most of you maybe know what a mangle is. A big ironing machine with big hot rollers that press the clothes. Mangle. June 1954. Our sheets shifted in the breeze, billowing like cumulus clouds. We played hide and seek in and out of the walls of the sun-rinsed white until she gathered them damp into a wicker basket, its handles like thick, twisted ropes. The slim black girl dragged the basket into the basement, sat at the mangle. Exactly as mother had taught her, she guided the clean cotton between the padded rollers. Did you know that mangling reduces dust, presses the fiber ends back into the cloth? Mangled sheets stay cleaner longer, trap less dirt from the creek where we played every summer day. Besides, mangling saves time. Hand ironing would have taken this slim black girl longer, leaving less time for her other chores, cleaning the bathrooms, sweeping the floors, watching us while our mother played golf. One day I sat on the basement steps, watching the sheets slither through the fat, hot rollers like spaghetti sucked between our lips. And then suddenly my sister's arm disappeared, trapped and burning, her scream terrifying me and that slim black girl who likely would take the blame. So that was Alberta. My brother is there. Hey, brother. Some of these will sort of resonate with him. This is one that's actually about him, but sort of about him, but not exactly about him. This is, I don't know if you've ever read Stephen Dunn's essay called Degrees of Fidelity, which is about if it's okay to write about the people you love and maybe tell things that aren't exactly true, but maybe are the emotional truth. So that's what this poem came from that. Sort of like a TV movie where you have to add things for dramatic effect. It's not the actual factual truth. It's called Little Brother. In Birdies and Wolf, he was always the wolf, chasing my sister and me through the living room, down the hall. We dressed him in ballet costumes, pretending he was our baby sister. Our mother's leather gloves on his feet made him a monster. She coddled him. Tricky, he learned early how to get his way. I can't say I loved him. Maybe he was jealous, us two across the hall, playing rhyming games and singing TV jingles while he trembled and fretted alone in the dark. For years, he insisted we had tortured him. We did. carry him into deep water, though he could not swim and was terrified away from the side. We were only little girls, and we could touch the bottom as far out as we ventured. He clung, whimpering, to my sister's neck. I bounced alongside, doing handstands, showing off. We never let go of him, not even once. And this is one about my sister. My sister and I envy each other's outfits. We share shoes, shawls, handbags. Both of us collect miniature things like tiny chairs and boxes because of the dollhouse, she says. We exchange reading lists and recipes. She is the better cook, fearless and lavish with garlic. We serve guest dishes we have never tried. The kamikaze school of cooking, we call it. Her hair, a red that never was, is cropped short and well tended. I still wear mine long and thick, often weeks past a needed haircut, help with the gray. We're small, vain about our weight, competitive about our looks, especially now in our 7th decade. We laugh loudly, talk too much, drink single malt whiskey. A potent thread of vexation snakes through her. Her iPhone should not make mistakes. The shrimp should not cling to its shells. The headlines infuriate her. My placid brother-in-law deserves badgering. The neighbors are idiots. And yet I hold fast to her. She safeguards our memories, though they sometimes seem distorted, unfamiliar. 2,000 miles have separated us for more than 40 years. One husband each has come and gone. We endure. I love you, she texts after our last visit, and my list is not very long. I am surprised by the message, by what seems an admission, something she is disinclined to make. My list of love is long. Maybe that is the difference. I love her too, yet she is the one who said it. So this is a poem about my mom. And she was 11 years younger than I am now when she died. And it took me a really long time to be able to write about her. And then I wrote a lot. But this is one of the ones that I like quite a bit. It's called Tangled. Outside, the moon looks strained. Birch twigs tick against the window. My lover is stroking me, breathing on me. But I am thinking of my mother, her thin hair and swollen body, her vacant eyes careening around the sterile room, desperate for a way out. She was balancing a line thinner than a scalpel. My lover breathes, ragged gasps. I'm sickened by my desire, how I can concentrate on his touch, listen to his whispered questions, answer, yes, there's almost perfect, while her death rattle is echoing inside me. I remember her head rocking on the damp pillow, her eyelids fluttering, her jittery fingers plucking the sheets. Then she was grasping my hand, pulling me close to her lips, whispering to me, I love you, I love you, I love you. So these next couple poems are kind of about unraveling relationships. Really, my life is pretty happy, and Knight in Shining Armor is actually a great partner. But these are maybe more difficult poems. This one is called Last Family Vacation. From the Giardina, the Cavalleria's wide stone stairs, the rounded domes and upright towers of the Medici's golden city spread out like a painted plate. Happy for the moment, they trolled pasta puttanesca in a cafe, straight out of a Fellini movie. But later, at the hotel, he slumped on the bed and asked out of nowhere why she never wanted him anymore. Attentive to the cost of disappointing him, she sat on the bed and stroked his back. He unzipped his pants, kicked them into the corner. Kneeling between his legs, she took him into her mouth, hooked her teeth gently over the thick ridge of his glands, pressed the base of her tongue against him, trapping him against the roof of her mouth. She closed her eyes. He did not slip his fingers into her hair or skim his palm along the pearl necklace of her spine, bent as if to pray. Through the thin wall, she could clearly hear the carefree laughter of their children. These are the same sad people in this poem too. Um, this is called The Long Way Around. They traveled the blue highways, top-down, municipal pool scent of copper tone, a constant grace note. They shared narrow beds in mom and pop motels. Evenings he pored over crinkled maps. He didn't show her the road they would take, but she went along, never worrying about where they would finally end up. Back home, their tans faded. They stopped sharing ice cream. The past ribboned out in the rearview mirror, small, inexact. And there is nothing on the back of the photograph, no date, to remind her of when they were that young, that untroubled. If she hadn't found it, she wouldn't have remembered at all. And this is kind of I guess, a poem about motherhood. Yeah, I think it's a poem about motherhood. This was published in December, which is a very proud publication for me. It's a great magazine. Turning point. Weeks passed and I ached for you, but my nights were full of another's eager mouth. In my sleep, all I heard was the baby crying, wanting, her grace note floating over our suddenly chaste life. For days and months I had you, only in dreams I clung to, life rings afloat in an endless wash of waking, sleeping, half asleep. I learned to listen for the caught breath, before the cry, pajamaed footsteps pattering down the hall. These days, nothing disturbs my sleep and I still dream. We are always as we once were, entwined like acrobats, drowning in each other, graceful, reckless, those days when your touch made blood rush under my skin. In the waking world, we perform more cautiously, our practice pas de deux, knees bent just so. I know exactly how we fit. I always dream us young. So this is a pretty new poem, but it just won a prize in the St. Louis Poetry Center contest. It was a semifinalist, but then I saw that there were 18 semifinalists, but it was still better than a kick in the pants. So it's called Meditations on Transformation. Number 1, Mourning. In Rajasthan, Madras, had he died a worshipful Hindu instead of a long-lapsed Catholic, I might have sacrificed myself on his fiery pyre, fed the conflagration with my flesh risen with his ashes to whatever heaven opened its gates. Everyone would think that life without him wasn't worth living. That turned out not to be true, and yet for years I submitted to my church vows in the Christian Midwest, a compliant wife who cooked and cleaned, ironed and changed diapers, gave dinner parties, smiled for bosses, and kept secrets. Long before we finally called it quits, I burned to a crisp. Number 2. Even now, I'm not sure what I want to say or how to say it. My rages and ecstasies, griefs and recoveries have no more worth than any woman's cliches. They're of small consequence, and yet I persist in searching for validation, lamentable attempts to scratch my existence into a volume that might, in verses, illustrate how my life was worth reckoning. And while I concede it's nothing of grave import, I keep trying. Solitude. The unslept side of the bed, sheets smooth and pitiless, baffled as blank paper. An empty suitcase gapes a derisive yawn. Ordinary clothes are buried in unfamiliar drawers. Outside, rake scratch on the neighbor's path says things need doing. Make a start in the kitchen. Line up the wetted knives. Scour the boomerang pattern formica. Scrape accumulated filth from the checkered linoleum floor. Crack hen-warm eggs into a skillet. Phlegmy whites solidify, seething. Don't shrink from the yolk's accusing eye. So when I was defending my thesis, and I said that I didn't like poems about politics, and my professor said that all my poems were about politics. So it's just the politics of the home and the politics of the body. This is my saddest poem. It's called Why Old Women Stop Wearing Bathing Suits. because the skin on our thighs bleeds like crepe paper. Not the comely sort strung from gym rafters to conjure up the senior prom's Pearl of the Orient theme, or the reels we looped and twisted and draped on the dining room chandelier for the baby's first birthday party, or the colored sheets that stained our fingers red as we folded them into paper poppies to welcome our daughters home from college. First trivial, these creases emerge gradually, alarmingly, like the portents in a magic 8-ball. Outlook not so good. Crepe paper skin is appallingly pale and hairless, revoltingly festooned over our slackening bodies, loose around our arms, as if we are clothed in mourning for our dead spouses, absent friends, skinny jeans, for eager sex and ripeness utterly lost. Whatever. So I'm gonna read you one more poem. I have a friend who always said, leave them laughing. So this is one of my favorite actually performance poems. It's called Saying Oh. It has a little epigraph. Some critics speculate the word oh, as used in Hamlet, is meant as a stage direction indicating a sound should be made. Oh, says the rumpled girl in the doorway. Not really says, it's more of a sharp intake, breathy, her glottis slamming shut. There are also tears, soundless, except for the little lapping noise, her tongue licking them as she searches the street for her lost quarter. On the opposite corner, a gang of kids menaces, baseball caps sidewise, hems of baggy pants, obliterating shoe tops, surging. They ignore a hunchy old woman, her blocky black shoes firmly on the curb, her cane already in the gutter, so her balance all up and down like that, instead of tripod steady, begins to wobble. And she says, oh, not exactly says, it's more eek, a little squeak, like a kitten landing feast first after it slips from the warm top of the big screen TV to the cold floor. An Afghani driver, illegal, who is waiting patiently for a safe fare, reads comic books and keeps his occupied light lit until a slim blonde in Versace and Manolo stilettos crosses the street, arm raised just so. And when he seats her, he says, oh, it's more of a, hey, a sigh, an outbreathing of despair, and he flicks on the vacant light, but it's too late. She's already disappearing into the gaping door of a long black limousine, where a prosperous-looking man is reaching for her hand and sliding gracefully into the car. Oh, she says. In reality, it's more of an uh-oh, a worried gasp, because she's forgotten her coat. Oh, says the man, although it's kind of a cheese, a disgusted grunt, because he's already late and the coat's new and it was expensive. Oh, shit, she says, and he says, oh, shit, too. And meantime, the menacing gang of kids jostles the old lady who says, oh, sort of, hey, coughs it out, not scared, mad. And the beat cop who's coming out of the drugstore where he stopped to get some tampons for his girlfriend, who that very morning said, oh, actually, it was more of a whew, a hoot of relief, because she's not pregnant after all, and we'd get her some tampons. And he said, oh, not really said, it was more of a sob of joy, because he's married, but she doesn't know. So now with the tampons in a reusable plastic bag, he's hot-footing it after the baseball-hatted kids, who are snorting and shoving each other as they cut and run from the cop with a plastic bag of tampons and a donut he bought. They scoot down the busy street and they all say, oh, they really say it. Oh, 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 oh. It's easy to say it while you run. Exeunt. Thank you.
But I can't be bothered sending them out. Okay, this is called The Milky Way, a Day at the Beach. Skateboarders doing laps sound like a tsunami. A pair of shrieking girls like giant cicadas in pink bicycle helmets, running around, screeching at the top of their lungs. Somewhere near my campsite is a repetitive slapping, like getting the sand out of giant flip-flops, like blackboard erasers. It goes on and on and on. A kid practices their violin in the woods. He isn't very good, missing notes, whining strings, but at least it's the pretense of a melody. Dogs are barking. All the firewood for the campers peddled on the road is wrapped in 6 feet of flat plastic. What happened to string? You know, some of that is going to go into the fire pit. This is Rialto Mora campsite. La Push is closed. The ocean is presumably still there, still crashing on the shore, sand, round, flat rocks, driftwood, down trees, root balls, and families on blankets with coolers crawling all over the place like some long-legged birds. Listen to me cry, would you? Well, never mind. I just happen to think there's too many cars on the road, too many people in this resource infinite world, and what it all to myself. Is that wrong? Getting out of there, the capper, the payback for all this driving and all that way was the stars in the sky, the unadulterated beauty, ineffable gratitude that I should be alive to see those million stars. Illuminated, pincushion-like, backlit by heaven's light, celestial clarity. In the short while I gazed upon them, those stars scrubbed clean some neglected part of my outlook, my soul place. That unpolluted sky seemed to shine directly on my heart. But forget about camping. Okay, this is called drowning in meat. I am drowning in meat, blood-stained and beat, not a stick of broccoli to eat, not a chicken wing or a spare rib, a box of styrofoam barbecue chicken from last night's restaurant shift. Here, take this meat, it's free. The feet were factory removed and heads and hooves just yesterday with beaks that would all ground down, powderized into sprinkles for the dog and the cat and the sheep. I'm drowning in meat, my arteries squeak. There's pork chops, $1.99, shoulders and backs. What a deal. Pork chops on the Formica counter, thawing out. Pork chops and Bandicamp beans. Pork and beans. I've eaten an EB white barnyard full of cloven hooved, curly-tailed pigs packaged in styrofoam marble pickup sticks. Makes me sick, sick, sick. My girlfriend won't allow me to cry about it, to let loose electrolytes and salty water for the violence I have chewed, complicity with my aging teeth, or anything if not complicit, guilty of the animal abuse we all have tuned out. But without question, once animal husbandry, now the factory farm, feet crowded, bleeding on metal grates, electrocuted repeatedly by grinning dickheads, treating life like animated objects is inhumane, profane, and disgusting. As the population swells, as the planet warms up, as all the gaseous methane, what comes of the millions of cattle that displaced wild buffalo and practically everything else, I cry alone in my room, choking down haggis on a stick, a Canadian import, a brain and organ treat favored by my bloodthirsty ancestors. This is not a great poem, but I felt the need to speak it. Business is business is business. Unbearably heartbreaking is what the newscaster says. Real estate is no debate. It's a land grab, baby. Make no mistake. Israel unleashes a storm of fire against little baby terrorists. Who needs dozers, excavators, when you've got U.S. Navy jet planes to flame down apartment buildings in one shot like a stiff drink? Dandelion puff, vaporized. Ronald Reagan's Iron Dome, Mars weaponry right here on Earth. Now, back here, where the judge says, maybe I'll release the video after the trial, i.e. cops have immunity to murdering blacks. The mugshot of the crack whore cop who said, oops, while on the job, thought it was her phaser she was pointing in the window of the innocent motorist who said, bitch, get that out of my face. So she blows his head off with her firearm. Now, with him bleeding out, leaning on the horn, Copper freaks, changes hands, swaps weapons, makes up this lame story. Her partner backs her bullshit. She takes a few weeks off and goes to work in the neighboring county. This piece, I don't even know if it is a poem, but I stumbled across it, and since some of my stuff is so heavy, I thought this was light. It's called Songs with Frosty. I have a daddy, and he's not you. I am a woman now, and I know when it's bedtime. Things change when you have kids. Oh, those guys, I used to sell them shit. She wants her groceries delivered. She foresees the future. Wrong turns ahead, crumbling roads. The Vaselines are playing on the E-radio, baby. My dog thinks he's black. And this is a tiny little piece called Vancouver Motel. The motel sign hums like a giant bug zapper, glows blue and red like Americana. Through the dingy curtains, old TV on a metal arm, starlight glass fixture, the wagon parked just outside the door. Vancouver, Vancouver, tomorrow I'll take a picture. There's a beat little trifold publication called The Spread that a man named Chris Dusterhoff puts out in Seattle. And it has kept me going, and it features a lot of other far out poets, and they really liked that piece. They wanted it, the Vancouver Hotel piece. This is called Amenities. I took my amenities out for a walk. Careful to pick up after them. 3 accidents uncleaned will get you kicked right out. We've got to be careful for the lady in number 3. She doesn't like me, and I know she's put her little dog Scat near my entrance, trying to implicate my amenities. My amenities were so named by the landlord, who doesn't live here anymore. The building has been sold and resold like a commodity rather than an apartment, an oddity that beguiles capitalism still. When I came in, the dogs were Cain and Abel. But then this new management company said I was lucky to have a place. Amenities were $250 each, non-refundable. I used to use the porch to hang colored lights, light up the night a little, but the landlord said that porches are amenities. We can take it away. No grilling, no wind chimes, no bird feeders of any kind, not those messy seed tubes, nor the hourglasses with little plastic flowers for the hummingbirds to siphon nectar. All that looks and sounds nice, but you have to pay extra. Birds bring rats. You wouldn't want that now, would you? But it doesn't matter what I want. The amenities and I dodge traffic and go to the park where we're free to run and piss and bark. But the apartment's rent has climbed from $500 to $1,200, 400% in just 3 years. And what do we get for the extra money? What amenities do we get for the bread? Swimming pools, elevators, wind chimes, solar energy, pool tables, ping pong. The system is broken, something's wrong. We don't get dick. It was all the best of times. It was the worst. After all, Martin Freddy's with their union-busting trucking racket will feed you cheap, cheap, cheap. What do you want to feed the birds for anyway? Yeah. I'm going to do 2 more, okay? Okay. Bipolar day at the beach. Who the hell would want to need me? I am a horrible insult to a monkey, a dirty, filthy human being. And today, all the modernity, the jewels, the man jewels, the tattoos, all the clothing sewed together with stolen buttons and promises, broken rocket parts fished from the ocean, me naked without a single boner pill, they're constantly texting me about because I once must have looked up strap-ons or rubber extenders to enhance my aging gender? What more a man if not his penis? I lost my place. This is a question for the ages, for the aged, and one who should turn the page on it already, but I wasn't quite over it just yet. The waiting, the hesitation to embrace me in total body and soul, both though I feared were too battered to really matter to anyone. I doubted my ability to be faithful, doubted my ability to make money, I doubted my ability to be in love. So I strapped on styrofoam to the inside of my legs with abandoned bungee cords. To my feet, to my arms, I bound broken buoys. To my outside of my legs, the dregs of happy campers, the flats of an ice chest lid tied to my back with frayed yellow string, abandoned fishing net tied round and knotted in the front. I jumped into the sound from the cement slab rockery where the seagulls gathered and chattered, their yellow beaks speaking the only truth that really matters. Yap, yap, yap. Whack. I lay on my back and did a lap. Looking up into the wishbone sky, I felt floaty, light even, unencumbered like. I drifted, feeling free. The clouds parted, bringing with it the insolent sun, smiling all the time. What's so goddamn funny? But I could not resent her another moment, not that now that I was myself the raft that the seagulls landed on, counted me stable enough to spread their segmented pink feet, lay down like puffy big budgies, and splat, squirt, white, poopy paint job. The absurdity of life suddenly reaching through the fog, I managed a chuckle, feeling as good as I felt all week. I rudder my head left and head for the beach. I love that piece. Okay, gamification, indicate by clapping with your fingers. Tikal pyramids or word trade? World trade. No? You can't hear me? There's one. Overlord says he doesn't care. Okay, world trade it is. Best job I ever had was in El Salvador, working for this American behemoth, Birds Over America. We shook these giant purple sunflowers, then crawled around under the bushes that smelled of turtles and blue water, which we weren't hurting for once. But the monkeys were pissed off, throwing hazelnuts at us with surprising accuracy. They screamed their fool heads off and bared their teeth. We sprayed them with super soakers, high octane, American made, protest ready. They sprayed an authoritarian sized jet that bowled over the sad little monkeys. And South American birds had to go elsewhere. For them, it was a hardship, but for American birds, it saved them from hunting for berries and seeds. That was good because all the available real estate had to be sold off. It just has to be. So Birds Over America had to keep backyard feeders full so no one would notice the dramatic shortage of land creatures, mammals, we used to call them. But now they're nearly lost to us all. Orca with their salmon in the Pacific Northwest, grizzlies in the Rockies, of course, the polar bear up north, where they're already highway building, drunk on Eskimo blood and caribou bones. They are ice trucking their fucking way into Santa Town, to the North Pole and back in record time. The thinning ice leaves nowhere for the white bears to hide and breed, and feeding off it all are Target and Walmart and all the Chinese government-made balancing act of an economy built on a teeter-totter, a house of cards. If Jesus came back now, he'd hop across the shipping containers that replace driftwood and whales and bring merchandise we would gobble up with our paltry paychecks. Checking in with the kids, everyone's all right. It's nothing short of a miracle that we all grow up at all, the way we eat, the way we treat each other, the way we stop and drive around, falling and out of love like a fashion trend. I love people. It's mankind has me scared. I hope we won't kill the shit out of every living thing we come across on Mars. But I don't see why that should be any different. Ask a whooping crane what time it is. She might just disappear before your astonished eyes. And I lied, I'm going to read one more. Called Tikal Pyramids. I was on a long autobus ride from Guatemala City to Tikal, where there was a field of Mayan pyramids which had been found in the jungle like an 85 Camaro swallowed by blackberries. I was the only gringo on a bus full of Guatemalans, men and women and some teenagers, I imagine, a baby or three ensconced in their mother's purple clothing. Dwayne Johnson and The Rock was showing up front on a good-sized screen. The sound was down and the audience incredibly quiet. Some watching as The Rock saved the day by smashing up the bad guys without automatic weapons, using only his fists and his charming smile and his incredible muscles upon muscles. I was wearing Carhartt cutoffs and a hemp vest I got at Buy Beal's Country Store in Vashon. I just let my paper go after a 7-year run, and I needed some time out. There was a mom and pop travel agency off the highway, and I stopped in and said, I want to go somewhere where I won't see other Americans. Guatemala is nice, they agreed, and inexpensive. They didn't tell me until recently it had been involved in a retracted civil war. I was overwhelmed by Guatemala City and quite sure I'd be murdered, so I left for Lago Flores with its lakes and volcanic ring of fire, and I drank and I laughed with the natives who mostly wanted me to bring them to America. I bought a big buck knife, para mi fruta, I told them, for my fruit, and I bought a transistor radio, and Radio Flores was on the air. I was lucky to land in Radio Central, where I walked around with my earbuds in, and I spoke with the Zapatista or shoemaker who had been to Louisiana, and we smoked cigarettes on a stool. This was during George Bush and Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, and that whole crew. I broke bread with a very old man and got very ill. The German doctor who came down the hill warned me of the Jews who, like the Germans, had settled in Guatemala as Hitler was getting busy making incendiary speeches and took up residence in opposite valleys. They thought sought peace when they arrived. They still didn't speak to one another unless absolutely necessary. I climbed off the bus and up the steps of the Tikal Pyramid, and there I sat with my long socks and shorts with deep pockets, and I lit up a smoke. I imagined the priests, the royals, high on some raspberry-like liquid mead, chopping their heads off their enemies, drinking this jungle wine and laughing uproariously as they bowled the disembodied heads down the many stone steps. So that is all I'm prepared to say, and I should have followed Nancy and ended with a funny instead of that dud, but it is what it is.
The breakdown. Tearing oneself away from wife importunate, I drove recklessly to son's place. Mind darkly grappling with this thought, enter the class before its start. At son's street front abruptly stopped car, he emerged. Come with me to class, he demurred. You can't sneak into class, it's cancelled. Enraged, I stood in the street in the dark, brooding morning, yelled, You are not my son. Pinioned, I was taken in. The enormity of my words, the loss of control, dissolved into a flood of tears. The children were off to school. You need to take him to emergency, the mother said. So we set forth on a journey may we never repeat. Of that I shall speak anon. Where the mind is clear, no dark specks of illness linger, no greater joy can life offer for one that has the dark side wandered. That's it.
So, well, this is the first time I've tried to read this one out loud, so we'll see how it goes. It's called What We Need to Know. You were the only one of us who had a clue. Then you lost it. Now you haven't a notion where it is, if you dropped it, or in which drawer you might have safely tucked it away. Now we all wait for revelation, or revolution, the turn away from, then toward. Spin doctors massage our ears, seductive scenarios, subtext of terror and fear. Don't ask questions, they intone, just be very afraid. And, by the way, do what we say. Do you have any inkling, intimation, or perchance a slight suspicion of how to get us back on track, moving in the right direction? Not too far to the right, but like porridge, just right. There are no more giveaways, dead or alive. The inkling you had is blotted. Hints drop shivering in the snow. Clueless and quaking, we need to stop waiting for rescue, strike out through the wilderness, build matchless fires, test mushrooms on the inside of our lips, rediscover on our own what we need to know. So,
I was gonna read a couple of pieces from a book that's upcoming, slowly going through a production process. Anyhow, it's entitled "A la rechercher les temps perdus," or "Get Off My Lawn." New poems and old ephemera. But the last portion of the book is dedicated. It's sort of my tribute to Los Angeles, a city that I went to when I was in my late teens and early 20s in the hopes of becoming a world famous comic folk singer. And that didn't work out too well, but I have a bunch of memories. And so I thought I'd share a couple of those tonight. The first poem is entitled Ocean Avenue, Fall, 1977. Any star that can shine in Santa Monica is lucky. Or stupid. When I wish on the first Greyhound bus of the night, saying, buses gray, passengers green. Are your restrooms nice and clean? How many feet are fast asleep underneath the matchbox seats, while cramped and screaming, a hand still holds a jelly sandwich 4 days old? These are all short poems. The next one is called The Snows of Yesteryear. Oh boy, Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center is having an event Sunday. Shaman's Blues, the art and influences behind Jim Morrison and the Doors. 35 years ago, snaggletooth junkies on Venice Boardwalk looking for handouts used to try to impress fresh-faced boys like me by saying, man, have you ever heard of the Doors? Oh, I was in jail with Jim Morrison. And you know what? All those guys are dead now. My next poem is entitled Priorities. At my friend's church, the Community Service Board lists the weekly meetings of local organizations. There is one meeting for AA at 8 p.m. Monday. There are 7 different time slots for various chapters of Sex Addicts Anonymous. This is one of the ways you can tell you are in Los Angeles. All right, and the last one I'll read is called John Reed. John Reed. My personal hero in the large illustrated history of Wallace Berman's life and work, Semina Culture, was John Reed, a poet and collage artist of no apparent relation to the dude buried in the Kremlin. In fact, he was a total loser, a drug-addled sponger and grafter who created a few ephemeral pieces of art before dropping out of sight for decades until turning up at the end of the millennium as a homeless nut job furtively living on the Pasadena Library grounds. And yet, just a few years after his squalid wino death in 2001, there he was, immortalized forever, with the portrait of his younger self and a sampling of his speed-free creations adorning the walls of a major art exhibition and catalog. For nearly 40 years, since I was 19, this has always been my nebulously conceived dream, formulated on my long walks from the Venice Boardwalk to Santa Monica Pier, where I lived in a dilapidated boarding house on Pico and Ocean, where I had to wear sneakers to take a shower in the communal bathroom to avoid stepping on broken glass and syringes. Not for me, world fame and riches, a sucker's game. I would have been happy to die a minor cult figure, content to have the smallest talisman on the path of recorded history to commemorate a life spent searching vainly for art and love. For crying out loud, is that too much to ask? Thank you. That's my LA experience.
Thank you, Leopoldo. It's one poem, a short poem from my book, Falling Off the Empire State Building, and it was also published in Hospital Drive, called Mashed Peas. They say, be a good boy and eat your peas. I think he's a man and he's dying, but I say nothing. All your life, you never ate peas. Now, as you await death, they treat you like a child. You can no longer swallow, so they mash all of your food. There's a brown pile for beef, a green one for peas, and the normal white one for potatoes. When everyone leaves, I push your plate aside and move your wheelchair close to the window. I place a blanket over your legs and kiss the top of your head. Thank you.
Okay, this is something I wrote about 12 years ago now, I think, and it was for one of my Hugo House classes again, and this is about an eel who lived in Lake Erie. An eel has a bad day. The sun swerved from the lead-gray undulations of Lake Erie this morning, where an eel swims beneath the surface in a perpetual night. There are headlights in place of his eyes, probing through the murk, their halogen stare discomfiting others. He lies in a filthy bed at the sandy bottom of this watery circus of marine life passing him by in these Proofrockian depths with no possibility of wearing rolled up trousers on a beach. He drifts beneath the monoliths of oil tankers, avoiding the million faceted sunlight that would scorch the length of his body. He is a laser-eyed spectator navigating the sleeping towns of old shoes and tires and rusting pleasure boats. Meanwhile, life goes on along the shore where newspapers expire and Buffalo loses population, and the Cleveland Indians reach the World Series on rare occasions, but never win.